waking up being fully dressed. It's just different.
Oh man, if you guys knew the conversations that go on before we go live, you would be amazed we get anything done. So, good morning. Welcome to another episode of Road FS Detail Memoirs. Of course, every week we get together and we explore and meet with amazing people that are in the industry that have amazing stories. You know, they're either detail business owners or suppliers, vendors, or partners. And today we're super excited because we have Ian Rammelkamp from Auto Fiber. And I've wanted to have you on the show for a long time, and you and I were visiting at SEMA. And if you guys missed SEMA, you missed a great show. It was packed. We had a great time. Rod and I don't think slept very much, but it was still very good. But one of the things that you have a very unconventional journey coming into detailing. So let's explore the auto fiber story and how you got into the detailing world.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm not a professional detailer, so that makes me a little bit different. Although I'm pretty well versed in detailing because I've been selling products, microfiber products to detailers for over 20 years. So that has built up a lot of experience and knowledge. But so the way that I got into it was, I didn't come into detailing or even selling microfiber products because of that. I just wanted to start a business. I got out of college. I had studied a thing called cognitive science. So actually, I thought my business career was going to be more kind of like your guys's. So when I was young, I think if I had predicted where I would be, it would have been more like Road FS, like designing software. So I studied human computer interaction and user interface design. And so that's kind of how I got in. So I got out of college and I had no idea how business worked, how people made money. I mean, I had jobs, worked in restaurants, kind of jobs you have as a kid. But I just had zero understanding. And so I wanted to start a business, and my dad had a business importing microfiber and selling it. He was one of the first people in America to be selling microfiber. And so what I wanted to do was start an e-commerce business. And so I bought a few cases from him, started selling this stuff on eBay, built a couple of websites, and pretty much it just became this snowball that built up over 20 years of trying to learn business and e-commerce, and really kind of fell into the whole detailing thing. Because, with regard to microfiber, detailers were the earliest adopters compared to any other industry. I think detailing in general, like there's a lot of innovation and they're always searching for new ways to solve problems, and the industry's just changing all the time. And I think there was a great synergy too happening, like with the beginning of the internet and detailing, where there was like this explosion of information on the web forums. So really the way that I started was through web forums. There was a forum called Autopia, and the guy who started it was actually in San Diego. His name was David Bynan. And, I met him, like he actually had servers in his house, like, and, just huge servers. And he was running these forums. I think he ran actually for some of the other forums for some of the other companies that had created the stuff. But anyway, so we kind of had this like tech connection, right? So we would talk about these things like web design and internet stuff and the future of the internet. but really, so I started helping him design products for his brand. And, really it became like a pretty solid wholesale business. So really we were kind of behind the scenes supplying most of the detailing brands, microfiber, and developing them products along the way. And originally I had started auto fiber. The first auto fiber, like if you go back to the Wayback Machine, I had created an auto fiber site in 2003 and started trying to build the brand. But what happened was the wholesale business, the wholesale side just became so successful that kind of fell to the wayside.
Right.
But then around 2015 or 16, microfiber became so much more entrenched in the automotive detailing world. It just became the de facto standard of everything.
Right.
And I realized that I had to create a brand around the product so that people connected our brand with the innovations that we were making, because people didn't. So what would happen was, we would create these products, sell them to these other brands, and then another company would come along, or a Chinese factory trading company would come along and knock off the product, make it look exactly the same specs, same color, same everything. And but it would often usually be an inferior product. So really, 2016 was when we really switched our philosophy more towards a direct to consumer type model, and really trying to build the brand so that customers knew that that we were focused on quality and having a product.
So let me interject here, because I think this is a really key point to this. So when you're talking about that time frame of when you were getting the knockoffs and everything, we're still fighting that today, and I'm always intrigued by it, because you see people out on the current forums and they're like, what brand do you use? Who do you go with? Oh, I go buy the cheap Costco ones. And I'm like, you know what? I do too, but I use those to clean the wheels with so I can throw them away because they're not decent towels. So how do you describe the difference between a quality microfiber towel and something that you're buying the bulk, and then it's the Costco big yellow pack that everybody buys with the big nasty label on them? How do you talk to people about that?
Yes. So the way I think about it, like, honestly, I don't think the Costco towel is bad either. And I encourage people, if they like them for certain tasks, to use those towels. And from our perspective, we don't try to really compete with them on that. So it's an interesting story. When they first came out with that towel, like in 2005 or 6, I had so many customers contacting me wanting for us to offer a similar product at a similar price. And, it just isn't economically feasible from a business perspective. So we told our customers, go ahead. If you like that towel, go get it. If you want better, higher quality towels, you can still buy them from us. And, within 6 months, 90% of those customers had gone and tried those towels. And then they came back and they were like, all right, you're right. We need better towels for our business. And so from a manufacturing perspective, it's just like anything else in the world, right? Like, any product that's made can be made at different levels of quality. And even our company, we sell all different types of qualities of products. And we're still big in wholesale. And we supply different industries like janitorial and housekeeping, golf, sports. And so, and a lot of those industries, they don't need the higher quality product. They don't need a product that's going to last as long. They don't need to use like the most expensive high quality yarn. They don't need special edges or stitching or higher GSM, right? So there's all these factors that go into all these specific products that are designed specifically for detailing tasks. And, it costs more. And then the other factor is, so like our focus is not price. That's not the number one factor for our product. Where for Costco, that is the number one factor. And so
and I think that's a perfect answer to that, because that's always, you see that and people are going back and forth. And I'm like, if you're in a market where it doesn't matter that you have this big nasty label that says Kirkland on it and it scratches the snot out of the paint that you've already just polished up, why are you doing the work if you're just going to tear it up like that? You're saving $3 on something that you're charging $900 to do. So, and like I said, I use them for certain things. They're perfect for wiping out, the inside of a trunk where it gets all nasty and greasy, and the wheels and engine compartments. They're great for that because you're not worried about it. When you're paying the higher price for the higher quality, you are concerned about that. I don't want to take a really nice, quality microfiber towel and get some nasty, greasy stuff out of an engine compartment on it. So they're great for what I call utility,
yeah, absolutely.
I was doing some, go ahead.
Yeah. And so there's another factor to this also. So, I mean, I started this business in 2001 when I was about 21. And now, it's 2022 and I'm 43. And we've done business with the factories that we're working with for about 15 years. So we've built these relationships with these factories overseas in China and Korea. And really, they've grown with us and we've built them up the same way that they've helped build us up. And, with Costco, they switch their factory and their supplier constantly, right? So since they're always chasing the lower price, what happens is there's like a bleed of quality over time. So if you've ever done business and in China or Asia, if you don't build like a good relationship over time, they will, and you're keep pressing them for a lower price, they will find ways to get you a lower price and they'll start to cut corners on quality. So what happens?
Absolutely.
Yes. And so what happens with Costco and other big box stores, since they're chasing price and price is the only important part, the quality goes down. And so there's a cycle to it, right? The factory will start with pretty good quality. And then over time, as they're getting beat down on price, they'll start skimping in different factors with different yarn or the quality control. And so that the consistency of the product fluctuates greatly as it goes down. And then they go to a new factory and it's just the cycle that plays out over time. Yeah. And that's why if you've used Costco towels for years, you know, and maybe even buy them from different Costco's, you'll notice that they're very low on consistency.
Yeah, they're still yellow. That's the consistent part. So let's switch to because I'm a nerd. Obviously, we own a software company. So let's switch to some nerd topics about auto fiber and about your product. So let's talk about GSM. Let's talk about quality, length of fibers. We just lost Ian. So we're going to talk about some nerdy stuff here in just a minute.
Talk about some nerdy stuff.
As soon as Ian comes back, we're going to talk about that nerdy stuff.
I think he lost his internet connection, but you know what? That's kind of that happens, man. So we're still live. Give him a couple seconds.
So anybody, if you have questions while we're waiting, go ahead and spit them out in the comments. So when he comes back, I keep touching the table.
Yeah, you're like
waking the mic out.
It's like Rod can't like not move.
I have to move. Gotta move.
He starts to come in and then he goes out. So, but yeah, and this is I'm really enjoying this conversation.
Here he comes. He's coming back.
So we're coming back.
So
nope.
Coming back. So as we get into the conversation with him about the different qualities of microfiber, this is where your opportunity to ask a question of somebody that's done this for over 20 years. So ask some questions. I have a few that I've kind of prompted ahead of time, but things like length of fibers and the percentage of this material versus that material, that all makes a big difference as far as absorbency, twisted versus blended. I mean, there's all kinds of different stuff. This is about as bad as buying a latte from your local coffee shop. So I would like the gluten-free twisted fiber microfilament towel.
That's why I guess I'm kind of the Costco guy when it comes to coffee. Give me a hot chocolate with some whipped cream.
No, I honestly, and I would agree with Ian on this. I use the Costco towels for specific things. They're more of a utility towel. And I'm sure Auto Fiber has some, and other companies have a utility towel as well that can be used for things that are not necessary to have the higher quality. You're not going to take a car that you've just 3-stage corrected.
Oh, there he comes.
And put some crappy towel on there. So, all right, we're back. So
can you guys hear me now?
Yes, sir.
We can hear you. We completely lost you. So,
so
before we jump into Rod's geek stuff, right? Because detailers want to know the geek stuff. As I'm listening to you and your story about starting out as being be a web guy and a software programmer, I realized that you're the Jeff Bezos of the detailing industry.
Wow. You got too much hair. I look more like Jeff Bezos.
Anyway,
so let's talk about some of the things that people have, like length of fibers, amount of this fiber versus that fiber. What does GSM mean? I mean, let's talk about actual microfiber to kind of explain it at a higher level, because it means a lot. It's a lot different. If you take a really, I'm going to say the word fluffy, but you're going to tell me why it's fluffy. Great big, really fluffy towel that feels super soft in your hand. It doesn't have any absorbency versus one of like your drying towels that has a high GSM. So nerd out, please.
Yeah, I mean, GSM is pretty much just the weight. So it stands for grams per square meter. And if you just take a piece of fabric that's a meter by a meter square, which, square meter, that's the weight of the towel. So beyond that, GSM, doesn't really mean anything. Now it does correlate directly to the absorbency of the towel. So in general, microfiber absorbs about 7 times its weight in water, but that can, be kind of diluted by the quality of the material, right? So, for example, then there's the blend. There's the blend of the microfiber, which can be 100% polyester, or 70-30 polyester and polyamide, 80-20, 75-20. So all those factors actually play into the absorbency also. So for example, a lot of towels that you buy like at a big box store are actually 100% polyester. It's less expensive. The polyamide is actually the part of the product that is the most absorbent. And that's part of the reason why 70-30 towels absorb more. Now, another factor too is that microfibers split. So it's actually, you probably heard this, it's split microfiber. And so what that means is that it's actually chemically split in the dyeing process. They use like hydrochloric acid in the big vat where they're dyeing the fabric, and it actually breaks down the fibers a certain amount. And so what happens is the fiber, it adds all these pores to the fiber that allow the water to get into it. So it's all, the fibers and the yarn is actually kind of like microscopic sponge. And that's, all those pores that create that capillary action are created through the splitting process. And that actually adds to the absorbency capacity of a towel. And so, you can definitely have towels that look and feel exactly the same, but are going to perform completely different. Like it's actually not, you can't tell. Lots of people touch the towel and think they're going to determine if it's soft or if it's going to scratch. And that really is not determinative of, you can have a super soft towel that feels amazing, that's going to scratch like with very little pressure. And then you can have other towels that don't feel soft at all that actually aren't going to scratch at all.
Yeah. You can do the same thing with a pad. If you take a wool pad and a microfiber pad feels extremely soft, but a microfiber pad is for cutting. It's heavy cutting. It's not it's not the soft feel that determines what it's going to do to the surface.
Yeah, and actually those microfiber cutting pads are actually, they're like a mixture of a couple different types of yarn, of microfiber yarn. So it really is pretty complicated in the variation of all the different aspects that go into a quality product.
So what is it about a towel? You know, if you give me one that's really soft, the assumption is that it's going to be, you know, for polishing, right? So what is it in something that feels soft that actually cuts?
You know, something that feels soft, lots of times what happens is a lot of these factories, they put like a special coating, like a chemical coating on the towel that makes them feel soft. And then that like washes off over a couple washes. And really what determines like you know, how, when it comes to scratching or not, you know, it's the fineness of the yarn. So it's actually how thick, you know, when it comes to yarns, there's this metric called denier, which is like which is like what it really comes down to is the thickness of a filament of the fabric. So if I remember correctly, a strand of silk is 1 denier, I believe, and you know, human hair is like 10 denier. And then microfiber is technically anything under 1 denier. And so, but then below that, there's a whole range of different deniers, right? So what happens is, so when they make the actual fabric, you know, polyester and polyamide are plastic, right? So they actually they pull the plastic filaments like super thin. But if you imagine like pulling a piece of like a rubber band or whatever to make it thinner and thinner and thinner, you know, there can be inconsistencies along. So the really high quality yarn manufacturers, they can pull the yarn super thin and consistent, and they can pull it thinner and thinner and thinner. But you know, that's a lot more expensive of a process.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when it comes to cutting, what they do is that it's a mixture of different yarns, of different deniers and different filament sizes, and actually those cutting pads actually have 2 different kinds of yarn. One of them is like an extra stretchy type of filament, and the other one is like a more firm filament. So it actually creates this blend. And the company that developed that, it was Meguiar's, I think, that developed it with a Korean manufacturer. And they really dialed in that fabric like to the perfect combination to get that specific cutting ability by blending multiple different yarns. So normally though, like in towels and stuff, it's not a blend of different yarns. Although, like for example, the twisted loop towels that are drying towels, they are a blend of 2 different yarns. And the idea with that is to make it more friction, less friction when you're wiping a wet surface. So for example, if you take like a really plush, super soft, high quality towel and wipe it along a wet surface, it creates a lot of friction because all those fibers are so small and thin, and they're just creating way more surface area and surface tension on the surface, to where, you know, the twisted loop yarn, because of the manual and the mechanical configuration of it, it actually creates way less yarns on the surface. So it actually glides across the paint surface faster.
Okay, that makes sense. Now that you explain it, it makes sense. Yeah. Before it was like, oh, this just moves faster. So, so when it comes to things like, let's say that you wanted to create a new product, a brand new towel that did something high performance better. what do you go through, like your typical manufacturing R&D process where you guys come up with a prototype and you go to your manufacturer and you're like, I want it to be a 62.5% of this and 40% of this, or what do you go through as the process? Do you just customer driven, or?
Yeah, it's 100% customer driven for us. And so this is actually where my college degree plays a big part in what I do. So you guys probably know, like, software testing, user interface design. It's a very iterative process, right?
Yep.
And what you do, like, one of the last things you want to do is have a programmer design like an interface, right? Because they are in the weeds of their development, right? And they can't think outside of where they are.
Right.
And so what you have to do, and what we were trained to do, was to sit and observe. You would get, like, 100 different people to use the software as it was designed, and you observe how they click, because different people click on different things in different places, and their intuition is different about how the product's going to be used. And then you take that information and you feed it back, multiple times over different iterations, and you create a better interface design. And so,
and how many times have we heard, why would they do that?
Because
why would they ever do that? And I'm like, well, they did.
Yeah, we call it monkey jabbing. If you basically gave a monkey a program and they were just like, ooh, and the programmers go, why would they ever punch it in that sequence? And you're like, because it's a possibility. You have to go through every sequence. So
yeah, and that's the thing, you don't know. There's no way to predict the way people are going to act in front of a computer screen. And now the same thing comes with tools and products with detailers, right? So, and I use a very similar process where I'll actually have people use the product and we'll observe them use it, or I'll get feedback from 10, to 100 different detailers and get their opinion on how it works. And then we will go back to the factory multiple times and make changes and iterate the product over time. So, and this is what I say, like, people are like, oh my God, you have such great ideas, or you make great innovations. And really none of the ideas are really mine. Now, I think maybe I'm like the conduit through which the ideas come. But I am using this iterative process, working with detailers, feeding it back to the factory. So to answer your question, actually, I am not really going back to the factory with necessarily specifications, like crazy specifications. What I'm doing is I'm going back and telling them, hey, look, this product's scratching, or we need this to be more absorbent, or this towel is folding over on itself more, or like this is the problem. And then they come back with like 5 or 6 different versions, and I will have people test them and gather feedback. And it's just a process we go through over and over and over again. Yeah. So one other thing I just want to say. So I have like a library pretty much of like thousands of failed product designs and it's like a well that I go back to sometimes. Like a customer lots of times will have an idea for a product or a problem to solve, and I'll be like, okay, wait a second, I have this and this, and we'll put these different pieces together, go back to the factory and say, all right, make this sample out of this different one, all these different versions that we make, and lots of times we'll come up with a new product from that.
And I think that's really good that you bring that up, because I think that innovation is spawned out of failure. Some of it's spawned out of ideas. A lot of the ideas people have is, we get constant ideas from customers, and it's how our product, how RoadFS is driven forward, is our customers giving us ideas. Occasionally we come up with a good idea.
Occasionally,
but
not very often.
We're the same way. We have thousands of failures in our industry, in the software industry, where we can look at, and the developers, they're really good at, they're not good at interface design, like you said, that's dead on. But they're really good at going, yeah, but this will fail because of this. Yeah, but this will fail because of this. And they're kind of your litmus test of, hey, I have this idea and I want to do this thing where we navigate from here to here in one less click. and they will bring up what's missing. Well, that click you're getting rid of is where we capture the data, or how do we do that? And I think that that's really good, because I think a lot of people envision product design, whether it be microfiber or pads or polishes, software, as this, Rod and Ian and Jody are just sitting around dreaming up what's the greatest new thing we're going to do. And it's going to be the rainbow microfiber, and it's going to be the greatest thing on the planet. And yet somebody's going to come to us with a reason that's going to fail. But that's how innovation is spawned, is talking about what can happen and what can't happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I would say, yeah, failure drives way more than success. So, I mean, and here's one thing for sure, and I'm sure you guys know, like, you can have an idea and think it's going to be the greatest idea ever, and then you bring it to market and it's a total flop. Or other things can be like the silliest idea, but it's like, hey, let's just go for it and try something. Yep. And then it's like this amazing seller, right? So and it's the same thing with advertising too. Like, you learn this, like, when you're doing like marketing, social media marketing, or any type of marketing, you really have to be experimental, and having a scientific outlook of testing, and actually being humble and not believing that you have the right idea, and being open and agile enough to switch and say, hey, wait a second, this isn't working. People don't like it. Let's switch to something else. So yeah, those are really the fundamental things that I've learned over this period. And so I'm super lucky, I feel like. So like, when this whole thing started, towels is not like the most glamorous business, right? Not like the super cool thing. But, I've developed into it for so long, and I'm so deep into it. And man, every day I love every aspect of my job and my business. And I love talking to detailers. And this is why, like, SEMA and these trade shows are like the best thing that ever happened. So starting to go into these things and has really changed the business for the better, because detailers come up with the best ideas, and there's always new problems to solve, and they're always giving me feedback. And I like negative feedback better than any type of feedback. So when anytime a customer's complaining about something, I want them to complain more. Those are the best customers ever, that are complaining about the product, because it really does. It gets my mind going, and then gets me thinking about problems that I need to solve. And it's like the driving force behind the business. So, because here's what I would say, like, our products are not, I like to think that we're the best, and that our products are the best, but they're not. We have products that aren't the best, and we have products that aren't as good as they can be. And there's always room for improvement. And so this is kind of what's crazy. It drives me crazy when people are like, oh, what's the best towel for this? Or what's the best coating, or the best polish, or something.
Oh yeah.
What's the best software for CRM? And it's just like, oh my God. That's just the wrong way to think about it. There really is no best.
Right. It's whatever works for you in that given situation. And I always, because we get that same question all the time, what makes you better than these guys, or what's the best software? And we always tell people, we're like, look at all of them and
go look
what works for your company. What's the situation? Are you a single person operation where you have a single bay and you're doing 1 or 2 cars a day, and your premium service is, a $200 exterior detail with no correction? Or are you a 6-bay shop with 12 employees and you do ceramic coatings all day long? The answer to all of those questions, software, microfiber, pads, product, polishers, they're totally different. If I'm the single person shop and my biggest deal is just doing an exterior wash, and I'm doing it for dealership work, I've got the cheapest polisher, the cheapest towels, and the cheapest product absolutely possible, because it's about production. It's not about perfection. It's not about trying to make it, you're not doing 50-50 splits on 2016 Celica that's going back to the dealership in less than 30 minutes because somebody needs it. You're getting it in and getting it out. Jody and I were on site with a customer 2 weeks ago, right before SEMA, and it was 6:30 at night. There was a 2016 Honda that had to get back to the dealership, and it was ugly. Yep. I mean, it had sap on and everything, and it was grab whatever pads you can grab whatever polish you can grab, and get it done as fast as you can. And it was a single stage, get it out the door. Versus somebody that's bringing in their black Audi 8 and they want it to look no scratches, right? So those questions I love and I hate them at the same time. And my recommendation is always the same. Whenever anybody asks me about the software, I always say, we have features, and whatever I produce this year, they're going to produce it in 6 to 8 months if they're lucky, and 2 months if they're
vice
great,
versa.
and vice versa. Whatever they produce, we're going to produce, because you kind of have to. But try them out and see what works best for you.
I think there's a really important lesson there that you just shared. I think a lot of business owners, especially detail business owners, because they're so detail oriented, when they get a complaint, their go-to response is to bring up the wall of defense and go, oh no, man, not my work, right? And you're like, look, I would rather have the complaint because it forces me to look at my product. It forces me to look at my team, my company, and I have to make a decision. Do I want to become better and more competitive, or do I want to retreat in this wall of offense instead of moving forward? And I think that's a really, really important lesson for business owners. Looking back, as we wrap up here, I mean, you have a 20+ year journey. What are some things that you've learned along the way that you think are helpful for other business owners?
Yes. I mean, I think that one thing is the most important switch that you can flip. The idea of, taking responsibility and taking the blame and then trying to improve. Because even if the customer's wrong, that, it could just mean that your messaging was off, and you just have to change the way that you framed the problem or the solution, and then you can take that to the next customer. And so, I mean, a business there's so many different layers to the business, right? Like there's the customer facing part of the business, there's the marketing, and then there's the behind the scenes part of the business, which is like, between accounting and operations and employee stuff. And so, I mean, you can apply that theory of, taking responsibility and being open-minded and being humble, rather than taking offense and assigning blame. To me, that's the most important factor. And so it took me a long time to figure that out. I mean, at least 10 or 15 years. I have not always had that philosophy with my business. I used to wallow in sorrow about, problems, and rather than taking them head on. And so one of the best books that I've ever read for my business was a book called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. And he has this concept called resistance. And everybody has, your mind creates resistance to ideas. And most people, run from the resistance, the problems that happen. But really what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to press into them and go towards the resistance. And really that it's almost like a barrier to entry, because what a business is, you're solving problems for your customer, right? Whether you're a detailer, or a software manufacturer or a towel manufacturer, really there's problems that you're solving for a customer, and you're hopefully saving your customer time, and they're going to trade you their money to solve that problem for them. And so when you're going into the resistance and fighting these battles against it, most people fall away. And so there really is no competition. if you're just pressing into these problems and trying to solve them.
That's awesome.
That's perfect. So go out and read that book, The War of Art. And kind of in wrap up here, a couple of things. You can find Ian at, give us all your,
pertinent
Instagram,
details,
website, all that stuff.
Yeah. The website's autofiber.com. My email is ian@autofiber.com. We're on Facebook, Instagram. We even have TikTok now. And then also, if you can, come to some of these trade shows.
Yeah.
I really, suggest going to SEMA or Mobile Tech Expo or, any of these trade shows where these detailing companies and detailers are, like, literally, I mean, I sell to a bunch of different industries, and I think detailing's the best industry. It's the best people. I think really, for the most part, people are really humble and nice, and it's just a great experience. So many of the people, the businesses and customers, they've become my friends over the years. And it's just like, if you want to be really stoked on your business and inspired, you should go.
Yeah, absolutely. I would second and third that. So next one coming up is Mobile Tech Expo, January. I think it's the week of the 26th.
The very last weekend.
Last week of January, first week of February. Go look Ian up. If you can't find him, you're really not looking, because if you can't find Auto Fiber, come on, they've been around for 20 some years, so you'll be able to find them. Really appreciate it, and glad we finally got to hang out a little bit at SEMA and talk to you. Everybody go out and go vote for RoadFS Detail Memoirs at the MTE Golden Mic Awards. Go vote for Auto Fiber for company. It's just, we got to give some love back to the industry. And I'm just absolutely blown away at the number of businesses that have been in this detailing industry through the 2008 and then up this year as well. You see all the negative stuff. You see all the people when COVID hit that were out of business in 2 weeks. And there's some of us, people on this screen, that have been through major downturns and economic times.
Just part of the process, baby.
Like you said,
embrace it.
It's either running away from it and throwing your hands in the air, or lowering your shoulders and going into it. And I think that's the only way to deal with it. That's one of the things that Jody and I, people are like, looked it up and like, man, you're like a little bulldog. You guys are just tenacious, and you have to
keep
be.
going,
I think that's
man.
the key. That's my message to businesses is, man, you got to be tenacious, and you got to just go after it. And but to your point, you've got to be kind. You've got to help raise the whole industry up, because when we drag the industry down, that's when it starts getting bad. So raise people up, raise up the whole industry. And I'm just glad that you spent some time with us. Really appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you, man.
Yeah, really appreciate you guys bringing me on. I think you guys have a great show here, and I look forward to seeing you guys in Florida and anyone else. And yeah, to me, like, I really try to just have a positive attitude just for my own mental health. And so I am always just, anytime a negative. So I like negative ideas because they help inform you of a problem you need to solve. But beyond internalizing that and refocusing it into something positive, I am only trying to remove any negative thoughts from my mind. And man, the power of that is phenomenal.
Yeah,
I agree 100%.
And that's something's trained in. I think most people have a problem doing that. Jody and I talk about all the time. We'll come in here, we'll shut the door, and we announce that it's about to get ugly. I'm like, okay, here we go.
Right, I'm getting on my box.
Getting on my
I'm like, okay, I can take it.
It's a mental thing. It's a physical thing that I say, I'm going to do this. And then I go, okay, now it's time to get off of that soapbox and let's talk about how to solve the problem. And I think it's a cleansing thing that sometimes people can't just get off the box. They just continue to wallow in it, So
yeah, well, thank you so much, man. It's been a great conversation. I always love visiting with you guys. Please go connect with Ian Rammelkamp, Auto Fiber. It's on Facebook, Instagram, now TikTok. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe.
And we'll see you next week with somebody else.
Have a great day.
Awesome. Thank you.
See
See you
ya.
later, Ian. Thanks, man.
Bye.